All right. Welcome in, Mr. Bill. How are you, brother?
Doing well. How's everything with you?
Doing well, man. I'm excited to have you here. I know that we kind of chatted about a month ago, before this collab happened. I learned a little bit about you, but I'm excited to, share you with my audience. We obviously were both in the Corps together, which is super cool. Love to see a fellow Marine. So Semper Fi, brother.
Yeah, Semper Fi.
So right out the gate, man, I'm looking at your Instagram bio. I see short-term rental, boutique hotel investor, and then U.S. Marine Corps veteran, man. So tell us a little bit about your story, brother.
Yeah, definitely. So quick background about me. I joined the Marine Corps right after high school. Went in there, enlisted for about 4 years. And then I was on two deployment, once in 2006 and once in 2008 to Iraq. So luckily, when we went, there was nothing too serious, so that was good. 2006, I did my MOS. So for those, that's a military occupational. Oh man, that's
Specialist.
skill specialist skill. I
Yeah.
always get it confused. All
It's
good.
one of them. One of them.
So I was essentially a generator mechanic. I worked on generators. I ran electrical. So 2006, we were doing support for the base, for the essentially utilities, like similar to how PG&E would. And
Yeah.
we also had like Marines that were doing what's called reverse osmosis, so the water purifications. But so yeah, and then 2008, we actually did security for the base. Went around the base, secured the perimeters, went to a near town village, got to interact with some of them. There's like two villages nearby. One was friendly, the other one was not so friendly. But
Mhm.
luckily, like I said, we didn't really see anything serious. Very, very fortunate, compared to some people I know, that went. But yeah, so after that, I went to college, University of Maryland, study Chinese and business. Um, after graduating, moved out to California, and during that time, it was like 2012. So it was very difficult trying to find a job. It wasn't until like 2013. And, oh, during that time, sorry. Got into tech. There was a VA program that was partnership with, or there was a organization that was partnered with VA and DARPA to teach veterans on like tech, how to get into tech. Like, so we learned everything from networking to servers to creating infrastructure. So that's kind of how I got into tech. I did do some like tech stuff when I was in high school. I taught myself HTML, CSS, so created some websites for um, for games I was playing. So like fan sites. Literally, what I did by learning was going to other websites. Like, oh, I like that. What they did with that. Just looked at the HTML code, copy that, put it on mine. And so that's kind of how I learned. And then also during summer and sometimes weekends, I was working for a friend's parents' company. They had a business doing like computers, building computers. So during those time, I would go to computer shows, build computers, did a little bit sales, not really sales, but talk to the customer mainly like, oh, what do you want? Gave them suggestions and helped them build their computer. But yeah, so going back to that program was like I think it was like a 4 months program from like 8 a.m. to like 4 p.m., just nonstop. And they use AI to teach us. And it was a
Oh,
online
wow. Nice.
tutor thing, but it essentially was like a very basic like prompting thing. So where like you follow through, and if you answer wrong, and it'll tell you like, oh, why it was wrong and what's like correct, and just kind of guide you through it. And then we had like hands-on lab to build the, like the infrastructure. So that was pretty cool. Right. They also helped that program. That program's still around, I believe so. Um, but at that time, we were the pilot program. I think I was like the second class. So everything was paid, luckily, because that time I was like just using my savings. I moved to
Yeah.
California, just like, all right, I'm just gonna go and figure it out once I get there. So, but yeah, so after that, they also help you get a job. So I interviewed with like AWS, with Akamai, and a couple other companies, and ultimately I landed in at Akamai as a help desk support specialist. And yeah, so I was only there for like a year or so, but my next company that I went to was a organization that work with nonprofits and schools in the Bay Area. And so we had like different clients, and essentially we were their help desk, their IT support.
Yeah.
So we would go on site, do any networking, like if they want to upgrade their phone system, their VoIP, voice over IP system, we would do that, or even the simplest like printers, or like the student Chrome computers are broken. So I'm like tearing apart from cannibalizing other Chromebooks to fix one kind of thing. So a lot of the schools were on a budget, so we were trying to make do with what they have as much
Mhm.
as possible.
So that's
And
pretty
that,
cool, man.
yeah,
So you have like, I feel before we keep going, I'm like, all right, hold on. I want to kind of dive into a few of these pieces, right? So you talked
yeah,
about the Marine Corps, talked about going to University of Maryland,
yeah,
studying Chinese and business.
yeah,
You talked about learning CSS and HTML, building computers, working for Akamai, nonprofit IT optimization. So it sounds like your kind of whole career path has been around either business and marketing or some type of IT and technology, right? So just learning how can I optimize the tools that I have and using them to a greater length.
yeah,
And you talked about how you were in the pilot program, and well, not well, you piloted the tech program.
yeah,
So and they had prompts at that time. So that's I feel like there's a lot to unpack here. So that I kind of
yeah,
want to dive more into it, man. Like I like learning, and I'm sure the audience loves learning about, especially like technology. So first, before we go anywhere else, I kind of want to start with the Chinese in business. So why did you go Chinese and why did you go business? What was the where what was
yeah.
the psychology behind that?
Yeah, so I went that because I'm Chinese culture, ethnicity. So
Okay.
one was like, oh, you know, it was I was like, oh, it should be easy major since
Yeah, if you
I
already know the
did
language.
learn yeah, I did learn the language growing up, but I haven't used it such a long time. I barely use it now, so I'm forgetting a lot. But so that was like one of the reasons. The other reason was like entrepreneurship. I just like everybody, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? So that's kind of gave a little of a spark.
Everybody's read that. That was my first book too.
Yeah. So growing up, I always wanted to like just like do something business or something. So that kind of like um that increased like my spark in that entrepreneurship. So in college, actually, we did start. I forgot to mention this. We did a group of us. So there was a program during summer, entrepreneurship program at the business school, and and essentially what it is that like you I think it was like 2 or 3 week a course, maybe four. And they teach you like all the different aspect of entrepreneurship, like it's like crash course. And one of the things you had to do during the first week was come up with ideas, and then form a team to either like, even if this was a fake one or a real potential business you can start. So we actually came up with during that time. I don't know nowadays. I don't think a lot of people print anymore, but during college at that time, we still print out papers and turn them in and things like that. So a lot of students are have printers and they run out of ink. And each time they purchase ink, they you buy a printer that's like $20, but they charge you like $50 for the ink cartridge, right? right? That's how they make their margins, right? So we actually took the ink cartridges that were empty and we refilled it. So during that time, there were a lot of different companies that does this, but you had to like do it yourself, right? So it's messy and things like that. So we went and said, okay, we'll just collect the all the students O1, and then in between class, we would just go and refill it, right? Clean it, refill it, and then give it back to them. So we were charging like I think like $15 or $20. Oh well, 12 to $20. I think max was like 20 dollars depending on the size of it. Um, so compared to like $40 or $30, all right. So we did that for about 2 years, I think, a year and a half, 2 years, before we all graduated. And we were like, and at that time, everything was slowly moving to digital. Um, so yeah, so that was fun. We actually won one of the contests. Um, Kevin Plank from Under Armour. I think it's Kevin Plank. Oh my goodness, it's been so yeah. Kevin Plank, the CEO of Under Armour. He was also an alum from University of Maryland.
Mm,
Um, he actually was on one of the panels, and we won some prize money for
that's
for
pretty
for that
cool, man.
contest. Yeah.
So I'm curious. Obviously, like you're learning how to be an entrepreneur, business owner at University of Maryland, and the service that you're offering is more of a recurring service, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you? I guess because I'm now like you got my mind going like with that. I'm like, okay, like how many units do you think you were doing per month, right? I'm like,
Oh
okay, like
man.
what did your book, right? Like, hey, we had 1,000 students. We refilled them every month. Did you store all their names in a spreadsheet or how'd you guys manage that?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Ah, man, this was like what, 13, 14 years ago now? No, more
Yeah,
than that. So I think if I remember correctly, we probably brought in gross maybe $4,000, for maybe 45 to $5,000 in gross over the time we were doing it. And it was three or four of us. And yeah, we literally just track. So we actually um, backtrack a little bit. So to kind of test if the business is valid, we actually created surveys. So we didn't use monkeys, a survey monkey or
nice.
whatever like that. So we actually
Okay.
printed out like little paper that's like, hey, do you how much you pay for ink or something? What is like your budget? Or I forget all the questions. I think it
So
was only
this was
like
this was
three
your
or
lead
four
gen
questions.
tactic. I got you. This is your marketing lead
Yeah,
gen
yeah,
tactic.
essentially
I
like
got you.
market research. So we printed
Okay.
out. We would go like before class start. We would run to whatever class that. So we were all in different parts of the campus. So we were like, hey, you cover these classes. And a lot of them were like classes that we were going to, we were taking at that time. So we would say, hey, ask the professor, hey, can I just spend like 30 seconds to a minute just asking everybody to fill out this quick survey is for this project, and they're usually pretty fine with it as long as you're not taking too much time. So so that was our market research, like, hey, pass it out real quick, fill it out, and then turn it in kind of thing. So
Nice,
so from
dude.
that we were like, okay, it's pretty valid. There is a pain point that we can probably service. And then for the database, yeah, we would just once they have that, um, once we got the service going and we kind of figure out the process, um, we did spend some of our money to create a website. So we had someone else, a friend of mine, um, build a website for us, so people were actually able to do that online, except for I can't remember now. For the payment part, I believe we just took like either cash um, or PayPal. I think, yeah, back then we used PayPal. So if you can't do like PayPal online, we just took cash. So yeah.
Mm. That's pretty cool, bro. Like I love that you guys found a gap in the market. To me, like that's how I think of things, right? It's like, okay,
Mhm.
what's the pain point in the market? what's the potential market cap of this, this pain point, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, if you're thinking of a college, just one college, I don't know, let's say there's 30,000 students on campus. Well, how many of them are using a printer inside of their dorm room or wherever they're using it?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much market share could I take? And what's the potential, I guess there's potential revenue, potential profits. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool thing to look at. And I love that you
Yeah.
guys were thinking about each of those things. So it's really cool hearing like entrepreneurial stories, especially like when you're newer in the, you're newer in the game.
Yeah. And it was a pretty good margin because like we could buy those refillable inks. I think they were only was 40 to $50, and I think we were able to fill like 5 to 10. I can't remember exact numbers. So and we're reusing the cartridge. So they would give us one, and then we also had a supply coming in where like, hey, if you have old cartridges that you don't want, so we would take those, clean them using like the sonic cleaner, and clean the heads because the ink dries out. So to help. So we kind of learned all this through the process, but yeah. um, yeah.
Very cool, man. Very cool. I'm curious. How did you? So when you were learning from your entrepreneurship class, how did you guys land on that service versus like any other services?
We basically like thought about like we just thought about our own pain points. So like the biggest thing is, especially in business school, you're printing tons of like, well, even with other classes, right? You're printing tons of paper, you're writing up essays or whatever, right? So we're like, hey, like ink cartridges, like it's so expensive. Like we're going through it like probably one or two a month, right? And then people are sharing. Um, so that was like one of the reason why we went that route.
Very cool, bro. Well, that's exciting. Like I like the audience to hear like these early entrepreneurial stories and just kind of hear like the thought process and kind of
Yeah.
schematics of how you're doing things, bro. So thank you for sharing that. And Chinese, bro, like it was it Mandarin that you were taking? Or which
Yeah,
dialect?
I was taking Mandarin. I actually I finished my Chinese degree, but I actually haven't finished my business degree because I used a GI Bill, and it only gave me 3 years.
Yeah.
So I actually finished my Chinese degree in 3 years because I took every semester. So fall, winter, spring, summer. I
Mm,
like used used it really good. So
yeah.
like I'm like maybe a year, maybe a year and a half short of finishing my business degree. Um, but yeah, but I mean at this point, with everything I've learned, I don't think I'm gonna go back and finish my
Yeah,
business
I
degree.
I don't think that you need to unless you plan on managing, like, being just a
Yeah,
C-suite for somebody else. Like, if you
yeah,
end up going into business for yourself, like, you'll learn, right? Like, you'll
yeah,
learn what are the higher leverage, habits or activities or even skills that you have to learn, right?
yeah,
And usually there's that core component of you gotta learn the admin side, you gotta learn how things function, right? The tech
yeah.
part, but eventually you're gonna have to know sales, you're gonna have to know marketing, and those are
Mhm.
just it takes more life experience, than I think that college tells you. I know it's probably bad, like, hey, uh, why are you telling people don't go to college? Because I mean, for me personally, like college didn't benefit me.
Yeah.
Um, like being actually in the field and doing the work has benefited me more. And now like
Mhm.
there's so many, and I don't want to say gurus and mentors, but there's a lot of mentors and gurus who are in business who
Yeah.
they can give you that roadmap way faster and much more clear. And I think it's a lot more effective. So,
I think
anyways, dude,
the great thing about what I took out of college was like the networking piece. Right now you could do, there's a lot of events, meetups, but at that time, I don't think Meetup was there.
it
No, it just
wasn't,
started.
yeah,
Yeah,
in
maybe it was.
2012,
Yeah,
early 2010s, it wasn't as
yeah.
present as it is now for
Yeah,
sure.
so that was the biggest thing I learned from college was how to network with each other, and and essentially in life, that's pretty much all what I've learned so far is who you know, like how you can help each other, right? The more you help others, the more you get back, to be honest. And like it kind of go into like the abundance mindset, right? And
Yeah.
then later on we can go into like mindset and what I figure out last year, some stuff too.
Oh, for sure, bro. I'm gonna write that down. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about. I want to get it. So let's talk about the abundance before we get into this tech. So tell me, like, where's your mind at on going into having the abundance mindset and collaborating with others? Like, where are you at now, or where was it, and where are you at now?
Yeah, I mean, so I've always was very like my I guess love language is like service, like action and stuff like that, right?
Acts of service.
So
Okay.
acts of her service, yeah. So um and so if I always try to help people, and this is kind of where um sometimes, and also like a people pleaser, so I want to go out. I'm always like going out of the way, and but then that kind of takes an impact on yourself where you're too focused on other people, right? And I guess essentially it's just finding a balance, right? Where like sometimes it's okay to say no. There's things where you got to focus on, right? And the biggest thing is timing. Like everybody has different timing. So just being more aware of that, and understanding and giving myself more grace a little bit, that you can't just help everybody, but do the best you can. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of answer your question a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, brother. I'm also somebody who's acts of service as well,
Yeah,
people pleaser for sure, man. Like, how can I help the other person to the highest extent? And then wait, hold on, I forgot to save some energy for me, right?
yeah,
So I definitely get you, man. And something that our mutual coach, right, or mentor, Rich, he talks about, bro. Like, for you to grow initially, it's like you say yes to everything, but
yeah,
as your time becomes more valuable, it's like, okay, now it's like saying no. Like no is much more important than saying yes, because now you're only focused on the higher leverage activities because that's what's going to move the needle the most, right?
yeah,
And I tell my team all the time, stop taking the trash, stop taking out the trash, stop cleaning the windows. I need you to focus on like higher leverage skills, which is like sales, building relationships, communication,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Like there's
yeah,
much more higher things for them to focus on. So definitely get that, bro.
yeah. And
I'm curious about the tech part. What the heck is CSS and what's HTML? Like I see it,
I
but what does
haven't.
that even mean?
Yeah, I haven't done that in a long time. So, but CSS is I forget what it stands for, but essentially it's like the style for, and nowadays they have HTML5, which is like I haven't even looked at that. But back in the day, CSS is essentially like telling the website how to display itself, like the colors, formatting,
Mm,
and things like that, right? So um yeah, and before, I think, so it's been a while, so I could get this wrong. But before, I think you could do all of that in HTML, but I think they like extract that out so that it's like more standard across things. So you have like one template, CSS template that you can use across your whole website. So it's the same, instead of like coding it in each page, like what colors you want, you can call
yeah,
that file that has all the format. So essentially, it's like how for your company, like you have a certain style for your header, for your letterhead, or your business card, right? It needs to use this font, this color, these colors, right? Kind of like that. It templates that for your website. But like
very
I said,
cool.
I haven't been done it in so long. So like all the stuff, right? We went through like Flash. Remember Flash, like the online Flash games? That's now gone, right? So everything's like HTML5, and I don't even know what's new or next now.
Yeah,
But for
it's
me
grown.
in
Okay.
tech, yeah, for me in tech now, I'm actually moved into managing a team for cloud infrastructure. So for
Ooh.
for a fintech company, yeah. So,
Okay,
so
so what is cloud infrastructure for those people who don't know, what is cloud infrastructure?
yeah, so as there's data centers, and you know how we have like servers and networking, physical servers, physical networking. So
Yeah,
essentially think of it, I will use this analogy. It's like server is essentially a bigger version of your home laptop or home desktop computer, right?
right.
It has like programs installed on it. You can go on the internet. Um, if you still run a physical networking connection, you have a LAN cable that connects to your laptop or computer, desktop computer, to the wall, and you go on the internet. But now most of us are on Wi-Fi, right? So essentially, it's like that, but think of it on a larger scale. You're running,
So it's the
people are
cloud.
running what website? Yeah, yeah. So and the cloud to us is like, oh, it's this like virtual thing, but it's actually physically they are running data centers. It is run in the data center. So, for example, you have like the major players right now. You have Google Cloud Platform or GCP. You have Microsoft Azure or Azure, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
That's a Microsoft's cloud platform. And then you have Amazon, AWS, Amazon Web Services. So our company, the fintech company I work for, we are on AWS. So instead of running our own servers in our own data center, we're utilizing their servers in their data center, or they could be running their servers in another data center, someone else's data center. There's like big companies that just run data center and have other companies, run their services on inside their physical data center. So what that means is before. So last year we migrated everything. We finished migrating everything from the data center to AWS cloud. So before we were going into, I was going into when I was still not a manager. I was going to the data center, racking servers, making the network connections. Then we have our networking engineer, our storage engineer. They're like configuring things to set it up so that we can run our application on it. But now instead of doing that, and every few years you got to refresh the hardware, buy new hardware, do the same thing over again. That's all kind of taken out. And AWS deal with that. Amazon or Microsoft or Google, whoever you use, they deal with that physical part. And you just focus on configuring it, your application in their network. So instead of physically connecting the network cables, everything's like virtual. So it's still the same concept, and the terminology is different, but essentially it's the same concept. Like you're running servers, and even now we're going into like other technologies, containerization, which I don't even want to go into. But yeah, so
Well,
so
let me
that's
set
kind
you up
of
here.
yeah.
So what would be the benefit of someone utilizing a cloud storage like service like yourself?
Yeah, so the biggest benefit, well, uh, it depends on who you talk to. Biggest benefit could be you don't have to buy, go into cloud. You don't have to buy all the equipment and have to manage that, right? If you and scalability. So, for example, let's say when you buy a server, like when you buy a laptop, you have different specs, right? The CPU is certain speed, you have certain amount of memory, things like that, right? And amount of hard drive space, right? Same concept with servers, physical servers. When you're building out your own data center or own infrastructure in a data center, you have to think about that. The advantage of having a cloud infrastructure, it takes that away from it. So let's say today you're small, and instead of you just need, like, let's say I'm simplifying this, but let's say you just
That
need
makes
one
sense.
CPU to run your app, and that web app website only needs one CPU. maybe 32 gigs of RAM and like um, 500 gigs of hard disks, right? And let's say suddenly you become popular and everybody's going on your website. Now you got to bump that CPU and memory and storage to be able to hold that capacity. If this was in the data center and you physically own that, you would either have to buy a new hardware. So you're looking at time, right? Working with the vendors, waiting for the parts to come in. Then you have to rack it, and then you have to do configure it. In the cloud, that's all gone. You literally go in there and go like, hey, I want to change this to more CPU, and
Yeah.
within a few minutes it's there, it's done. And you could even get it where, and where this is where we're going to modernization, is you could even set it where like if it sees an X amount of increase in traffic or whatever parameter you set, there's different things you can set. If it hits a certain threshold, it'll automatically scale that. So then you don't even have to go in and manually do that. And that's some of the things that we are doing. Um, Whereas before, so everything is now in like code. We call it infrastructure as code, or IAC. And I can go into detail, a quick detail about that real quick. So let's say you have a brand new laptop. You know how you have to do the setup. You have to enter your username, password, download software, Zoom or whatever, right? And be able to use it the way you want. So for server, it's the same concept. You have to install the different packages you need, the different application you need. You got to add the networking, connect to the Wi-Fi. With infrastructure as code, everything is on a code, and you literally click a button and it just does all of that without you going clicking through the menu, going to website, downloading everything. So I'm I'm simplifying it, but like that's the gist of what's happening. So this is what we're doing in modernization and some of the advantages of being in the cloud. Technically, you could do the same thing on a physical thing, but right now, with the infrastructure as code, we're just telling the AWS. So if we did still have the data center, it would just point to the data center and tell it to do it. But yeah, so hopefully that wasn't too
Oh,
too
it all
much.
makes sense to me, right? So
Yeah,
basically, you have your service takes someone if they have an application they need to run. I mean, even right now, like we're recording on StreamYard, right?
yeah,
And this is using the web browser, right? So
yeah,
basically, what you're saying is if our traffic, let's say we have 100 people per month,
yeah,
this is how much CPU or GPU or how much code we're
yeah,
gonna need to run at a decent level. But as website traffic starts going up, maybe it gets to 1,000, then okay, hey, we're gonna need to bump up that AWS or that cloud storage code essentially.
yeah,
We need to scale that up. And it
yeah,
sounds like since they don't have to own the actual the data centers themselves, it makes it much easier, right? Because I can
yeah,
only imagine, okay, I got to go get 100 more GPU or CPU. Like
yeah.
I can only imagine trying to do that, structure it all, and then instead they can just outsource it to through you guys, and then you guys have the relationships with, you said AWS, right?
Yeah, yeah. So for
Perfect.
our company, we run our own app. So we have our application. So our application, the company, the fintech I work for is bill.com. It's not my company. I wish.
Yeah, I get you.
But we do bill payments. So for small and medium businesses, so we do like APAR, we do spend and expense. We now have we're doing now tax season. We just acquired a company that we're doing 1099. So our application sits on this infrastructure. And for example, in the morning, right? In the morning, a lot of people start logging in, especially like the East Coast. So like 6, 7 a.m. That's when our traffic starts ramping up on our website.
Mhm.
And And because of that, we actually the all the servers that are running the application, it automatically scale up. So let's say by default we have like we only need 5 server at the most minimum traffic, right, to prevent any latency. Let's say we only need five
Yeah.
servers to run it, and then suddenly there's a spike in traffic that automatically scales it up to 10, 15, whatever. That way, you're not seeing like slowness or errors on the website
Right.
because of that. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, very similar to what you said.
Yeah, that makes sense, bro. So so for someone like who's the ideal customer for someone who's gonna need this solution?
Yeah, small medium business. So if you're paying vendors, you know how for businesses they go on like a net 30, net 60, right? Using
Yeah.
POs. Um, so and the biggest thing with like business, right? You need to get approvals, right? You can't just like for example, in your case, maybe if your employee needs to purchase something, if it's over X amount of dollars, you need to have certain approvals, like you have to
Yeah.
review and approve it, right? So instead of like, hey, going through emails or however, text message, hey, can you approve this? Let's say they just upload that invoice or that purchase request, that the quote that they get from the vendor, and say, hey, Rich, we need to purchase this. It's $1,000. They upload it through our app, and when you set it up, right, it'll say, oh, since it's over X amount, we need Rich approval, or we need 2 other approvals, and it'll automatically send it to you, and you on your app or on the website will go review it. So you can see the quote, and you say, oh, okay, that looks good. Hit approve, and then it'll go through the process of either like sending that approved request to the vendor, and they once they receive that, they can process, right, it, and then bill you later on. And then when that bill comes in, you can have it disperse through your bank or however, credit card or whatever, right? So that's kind of the part of it. So that's the APAR side, or sorry, that's the AP side, accounts payable. And then if you need to if you're the person that's sending a request to invoice someone else, that's the AR side. So it's very similar, but now you're on the other side, and kind of goes through the same process. And then there's the spend and expense side. Let's say your employees, or even you need to go on a business trip. You need to pay for the flights, rental car, whatever, right? You can get a physical card or a virtual card. You just add it to your Apple Wallet, and you just pay. So you could set a budget like, hey, for this trip, you can only spend up to $500. And because you have a virtual credit card attached to it, whenever you use it, it will just log it for that trip, or however you want to set it up. And now, instead of like getting paper receipts or whatever, you can just take the picture of your receipt, or upload it, right, when if like hotel, and you'll have all of that documented. So
Nice.
kind of removing the paper aspect of it and digitalizing everything and making it simple for small medium business to run.
Yeah, dude, it makes sense, bro. Like,
Yeah,
I'm all about optimizing and
yeah,
being more efficient. It's like, okay, if I do something once, how do I do it better the next time, and better and faster. So,
yeah,
dude, that's pretty cool, man. So, next, bro, I know we have about 10 minutes left.
yeah,
So last thing I want to get into, bro. So your investing side. So it says
yeah.
short term rent. I think it's a short term rental and boutique. So tell us some more about that, man.
Yeah. So our company IPO'd, and then so I was talking to, and this goes into like my like how I got into like a depressed mode, some mistakes I made, um, not being like egotistic. And so let me go into this, what I mean by this, break it down. And we could go a little bit over too, if needed, but
You just
um,
let me know, bro. However
yeah,
much time you need. So yeah, let's go into that. So you want to go into where you were having like
Yeah,
emotional.
yes. So I
Okay.
kind of I'll go break it down. The company I work for, we IPO'd so during COVID and right before COVID actually. So we are and all the tech, companies during that time, a lot of companies like the value increase, like the stock value increased a lot. So my stock option increased a lot, and they said, "Hey, make sure you talk to CPA, figure out because you're gonna have a lot of taxes." So I was like, kind of brush it off. I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll save like 50% on taxes, for taxes," and then and then it wasn't until like a year and a half later, after I got my first tax bill, I was like, "Holy moly, that's a lot." I was able to pay that first one. Then I was like, "Okay, let me maybe talk to a CPA." And essentially they were like saying, "Oh, since you're starting to get a lot of taxes and you're a W-2, let's use the short-term rental loophole." So this is like, where you buy a property, you use it as a short-term rental. It needs to be 7 days or less, or rent it as Airbnb short-term, and then you need to put in at least 100 hours or more than the people that you hire. So I went through that process, and um, working with a CPA for like a few months, and this is like 2022. Um, and it wasn't until like October, and I've already finished working with the CPA, and she's like, "All right, now you have a plan, go execute." And she told me that, I think it was like late August, September, and she was like, "You need to start looking for a property now because it's going to take you probably 2 months, maybe three, to find a property, and then also maybe a month or two to get like all the permits and getting it set up, and you have to put it on Airbnb for at least like have someone book it for 2 nights, right? So that you could claim like the tax loophole. And the way you use it is because you can use like the bonus depreciation, right? And apply it to your W-2 income. So all the expenses you put into getting the property, all the interest payment on the mortgage, and then and the depreciation, all of that you could apply it to your W-2. But yeah, so for the cost seg, right? It's cost. You have to do a cost segregation study. Essentially, an engineer comes out, looks at the property, and say, "Oh, okay, the roof is, you know, the life of the roof is 20 some years, and this is how much to replace it." So they go through every piece and itemize everything. And what the bonus depreciation does is, I think 2022, yeah, 2022, it was at 100%. So instead of spreading all of that over 5, 7, 15, 20, 15, 25 years or whatever the item is, you kind of front load all of that in during the first year. So um, so yeah, so I didn't really listen to her. And it wasn't until I think like late October, I was like, "Oh no, we're probably gonna get a big tax bill." Because I've been selling a lot of stocks. So I got on it to find a property, kind of rushed through the process, just like I need to get this done. We found a property in Tahoe, and we literally was about like a few days from closing, and I was still researching like the permitting stuff. Found out that because of COVID, and people were going crazy with the short-term rental and partying and disturbing the neighborhoods, they were really strict, to the point where like, if there's another property that has a permit within 500 feet of your property, you can't get a permit. I found out there was like 3 properties within 500 feet that has a permit, and they were grandfathered in because uh, that was enacted, policy was enacted like that year, or right the year before, in late in 2021 or something like that. So I'm like, "Oh," like, I had to, like, back out of that deal because I wasn't like, there was no way those 3 properties gonna cancel their permit. They're making good money, right? So I lost my earnest money. It was like 25K. Um, and that was like December. So I needed to get the property up and going by the 31st of December. So instead, I went to Big Bear, found a property, rushed through it. Like in hindsight, since I was not gonna be able to close on a property in 2012, I should have just waited and took the time and to do the research and purchase the property in 2023, like mid to late 2023, right? But I rushed through it and got the property in 20 March of 2023. So um, yeah, by then, I also things at work came up, so I kind of let it sit there for 6 months, paying the mortgage, like six, and also the interest rate was high that time too. It was like 6.5%. So I was just burning cash for no reason. I actually probably would have had much more fun by just taking all the cash and do a bonfire. That would probably been more fun than just like watching it, kind of just disappear. So all of that and just like, oh man, yeah. And then October 2023, I got hit with like I think it was like a 200K like tax bill. Um, and by then I was like pretty much like used up a bunch of money, right? So I had to get on a payment plan and just like 2024, I was like thinking through and regretting, and everything just went into a negative downward spiral of it from all the mistakes. Like, yeah, it was pretty bad. um, but
Man,
uh,
that's crazy, man. So where are you at now? So you did all that.
yeah, yeah. The property is it's still not doing well, right? Like I said, I rushed into it and like I pretty much purchased it at the height of like Airbnb. Like so 2023, 2024 was not that great. We made like a gross like half of what was paying for the mortgage. So and then so we pretty much covered the other half. Then we had our primary home to pay. Then we also had the back taxes. We're on a payment plan for that. So that was literally like another mortgage. Like my wife and I, we joked like we're freaking rich, but we feel poor because we literally have like three mortgages, like our primary, the Airbnb, and then the back tax for paying the IRS. Like that was literally three mortgages we were paying.
Yeah.
Um, so that was another reason. Like of course, money is usually the biggest issue with relationships. So we fought a lot during that time too. So, but we're a lot better. We're actually looking. So we last year I was like, okay, we have like three rooms in our primary home, so we just like started renting that out as a long term. So that helped with that. Um, the Airbnb, we're actually going to sell it and use that to put into a boutique hotel because one, it's not just one location. Or sorry, if we go into multiple, like buy more Airbnbs, there's like multiple locations you gotta deal with. There's also regulations. Things are getting more tighter with regulations, right? Especially in California and other states, like pretend mostly blue states or more tenant friendly. So that was another
Right.
reason I moved into boutique hotel because during that time in 2023, right after we purchased the Big Bear property, I actually saw Rich um, speaking at an event and saying like why he's going into boutique hotel. I think back then he just purchased Black Sands Inn or something like that, and he was just about to purchase another one. And then so it wasn't until late 2023 that I decided to join the hotel mastermind group that he start has.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so I'm in that group right now, and we're kind of looking through deals where and just trying to find something that makes sense for us. So I'm working with a couple other people that's in that group. Yeah, and the thing with, oh yeah, so we put that Big Bear property on the market, and we're gonna take whatever cash we get from that to put in one of these deals. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice, man. Well, it sounds like you've had the normal entrepreneur experience of great idea, failure, great idea, failure, great idea, failure, growth, right? Like still
Yeah,
about like failing forward though. Because a
yeah,
lot of times like hindsight is 2020 and it's like, oh man, I have this great idea, but the execution sometimes doesn't go
yeah,
sometimes execution doesn't align with your vision, right? Like
yeah. Yeah, and I've learned so much. Like the people I met, like are amazing. In the Rich is seven-figure creator. Everybody's amazing, right? Everybody's like super helpful, right? And that was another thing. I was like also like in the bad mindset. I was like comparing myself to other people, and I was like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. And because there was another person in our boutique hotel group, he worked for another company that went through the same process IPO, but he did it the proper way, where he actually took all the money he earned from the IPO, and bought like four Airbnb, and then like I think last year he actually quit his W-2. So I was like comparing myself to him and other people, and just like, oh, I'm such a failure. And once you go into that path, oh my goodness, you like
yeah.
spiral down. I got to a dark place, like but also like during that time, like mid last year, hired like a mindset coach through Jason Dree's coaching. He went on to one of Rich's um, one of our meetings. I think it was
Yep.
the Hotel Mastermind, with maybe the seven-figure creator group. And he talked about like the mindset. So I signed up for that, and it was like a up and down process. I was like good, and then was a bad. The mindset, like it wasn't until like October, I think October last year or November last year, like finally something just clicked. And I think the biggest part with that was, so my wife and I, we went to Mexico to volunteer, and actually uh, we went to, yes, it was Baja Bound. So you go and build a house for like a person who's in need, of a
Yep.
family that's in need, right? So that was really cool. Um, and Garen and yes for our seven-figure creators, they were the one who told me about it. So I signed up for it. So I went with them and a group of people in October, and it just like made me super grateful. I was like super grateful what I have compared to what they have, even all the crap that we went through. And I was like, you know what? They probably rather have my problems and have a nice house to live in, and have a job, and not have to work the field. He was like working he was a farmer, and working like crazy hours. So that just kind of opened, like I'm just like super grateful now. And yeah.
Wow.
Very, yeah,
That's amazing, man. I'm grateful that you're able to experience that, that opportunity to, just get that perspective or that frame of, of gratitude.
yeah. Yeah, we forget a lot sometimes. Like, yeah, it's bad situation, but like, it's how you come out of it. To be honest, we're always there's always going to be crap you get into. Things happen, life happens, right? But it's how you manage it, and the people you surround yourself with, right? And having a lot of faith that is going to be okay, right? So I had to dig religiously, and kind of go back to like my and so yeah, and it was just like it was a big learning. And it like my relationship with my wife like improves drastically over the past few months too. Our word, we thought about it, like our word for 2024 was growth. And looking back, we're like, that was a year like we both grew like significantly, like
Yeah.
mentally, relationship, um business life in general. So, and then now this year is like, I was like, all right, this year is purpose, to go and help others wherever I can, just do more of that. And yeah, so
Love that, man. Yeah, it's purpose is very important, man. And having a purpose and just being intentional about what it is that you're looking to create in the world is super important. So, staying faithful. I mean, it's all good things, bro. And I'm super grateful that you're able to, go through those challenges, make it through the other side, and learn the lessons you learn, and obviously come on the
yeah.
podcast and share it. So hopefully those listening have gotten a few nuggets that they can take and apply in their own world. Bill, anything else you want to share before we get out of here?
No, yeah, yeah. And if anybody is going through like the same issues or similar issues, like feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, so I have some tips, and a lot of people just sometimes just need someone to listen and vent and just like, here's my problem. Not necessarily like fix the problem, but just having someone that's gone through it really, really helpful. Yeah,
Yeah, 100%, man. And something I've learned is like I can't fix your problem. I can
yeah,
tell you how, I can give you all the resources, but
yeah.
until you decide that you're going to fix this with your own two hands and mentally, then it's not going to be fixed.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, I guess we can leave it there, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.